get started, as we do each and every week, by introducing my two co-hosts. We have Aaron Campbell.
Hello.
We have Ruben Pressler.
How you doing?
And today's first pick is a couple things. Ultimately, this show is going to go over the year of 2015, as we have experienced it. Magic Mike's came out in 2015. You know, lots of cool things happened in this year, and I'm excited to talk about them. But first, I wanted to mention real quickly, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/magicmikes. The guys who are $5 and above who support us at that level get a entire another hour plus of content every single week where you hang out with us. It's not safe for work. We're just yammering on about whatever we enjoy or thinking about or talking about. We make the show. You get to see the sausage made if you enjoy that. Patreon.com/magicmikes. And also, for those who support us at $20 a month and more, the Google chat will be up for next week just for them. To make up for December, then we'll have another one in January to do for January. But that is Monday, January 4th at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard. So mark your calendars.
What time was that again, Evan?
That was January 4th at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard.
All right.
That's when it's happening. Very excited.
Guys.
7 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Hawaiian. Get on it.
All
Come
right.
hang out with us.
Yeah.
Yes. You can come hang out with us. We'll talk to you. We'll answer any questions you have. We'll cheer to chat about things and stuff. We'll talk about Star Wars, probably.
And I just have to say, we let it all hang out in those pre-shows. Like nothing is off limits. I actually showed my underwear tonight.
We let most hang out.
We let most of it hang out.
Aaron's underwear made an appearance.
My underwear made an appearance tonight. I was not in them, but still. If you enjoy the show, I know particularly Evan. You know, Evan's very polished a lot of times with this image. So if you really want to see Evan kind of loosen up a little bit, you know, Ruben has a different side to him, and I do too, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So
I'm not sure I have that much of a different side to me, but
he's just the same guy.
Ruben quotes Shakespeare in the pre-show.
I do. I do get real serious.
Right. He's got books behind him now and everything. Like, it's getting real. Really serious. All right.
I got that book learning. Gotta look smart for the ladies.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
From Mima Sangir and Autumn Willer. So we're going to move up for some spoilers here. We're talking about the real first pick, which is we have our official spoilers. We'll talk about the unofficial spoilers in a little bit. We're going to touch on it quickly. We didn't get a chance to have a full show to talk about everything last week, which sucked, but right now everything's going great, and I appreciate you guys hanging out. We're going to talk about first Linvala the Preserver, which came from Channel Fireball. This was LSV's preview. They gave him an absolutely awesome mythic rare that I think will see a ton of standard play. This card is very reminiscent of Timely Reinforcements. Now, Timely Reinforcements was a 3-mana sorcery that if you had less life, you gained 6, I think it was. 6. And then you put in 3 1/1 soldiers if you had less creatures. That was a great way to catch up from like a mono red aggro type of aggression. Yeah. This is not that card. Linvala the Preserver is to punish the mid-range Obzon whatever by the big white control decks, because they're like, oh great, you have a Siege Rhino and an Anafenza or whatever. Well, I have a 5/5 and a 3/3 and I gained 5 life. Go. That's huge. If you're able to blink this thing, huge. So Ruben, how do you feel about this card?
Boy, this card's amazing. This card is the card for the set. This is the kind of card that will convert me into a white X control / mid-range kind of player. Because first of all, as a
real quickly, I want to talk about the stats for those who are listening to us on audio.
Sure.
It's a 2 white 4 generic mana 5/5 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, if your opponent has more life than you, you gain 5 life. When it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more creatures than you, put a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this is, it's not the same Linvala that we've all been used to, which would go into sort of, the green-white hate bears kind of decks and would be a mirror breaker.
Now too.
She is wearing clothes instead of a sheet. Yeah, that's a plus sign. Mm-hmm. But 5/5 for 6 flyer at bare minimum, and you gain 5 life or get a 3/3 flyer.
Right.
Is amazing. Spread across 2 bodies is amazing.
Right.
This card just has so much going for it. It's gorgeous art. Just spectacular work from Magali Villanueva, who's been popping up a lot more recently. Sort of one of these artists that we haven't heard a lot about, but has been getting a lot of top shelf jobs. Like Linvala is certainly one of them. I think that this is the kind of card that would convert me into a player, a white player instead of a mono red kind of, like stray away from my normal style. And
there is a lot of value to be had on this card. Aaron?
Yeah, I'm really excited. From a Vorthos standpoint, I really enjoy the fact that she has 4 wings, if you look really close, and I think the original did too. But it's
Yeah.
nice the difference between like the 2 winged angels and the 4 winged. And I've also seen discussions about the fact that some of the angels on Zendikar used to be, they used to have something in front of their eyes for whatever reason, and recently they've moved away from that, and the reasoning for that I think is really fascinating. But I like her. I think I'm going to take to calling her Thrangel, which is a combination of Thragtusk and Angel, because she reminds me of Thragtusk.
Yep.
I do think she'll be really good against Abzan. I've been playing Esper Control for the past few weeks. We do a lot of damage to ourselves with our fetch lands, and so it's not uncommon for me to win a game at 3 life. They're really, really close games, and Lenvala can really help you catch back up or stabilize, and especially against the Abzan decks. They love self-inflicted wound. I've had to eat that card many times when I'm playing with Ojutai, and her ability gives you some insurance against that. By giving you the life gain, which is nice. You get a 3/3 angel, and that way, if they play self-inflicted wound, I'm going to sacrifice the 3/3. You still have a 5/5 to deal with. What are you going to do about that? And I think she's really good. I think she'll be fine.
Now, worth noting with this card is that it itself is a creature, so when it checks for creatures, you will have 1 on the battlefield. So they need to have 2 in order for you to get the second.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, it's still going to be great. Yeah, if they have 1 creature, you still have a 5/5 flyer. You don't need to meet any requirements to get the Shivan Dragon.
So next up is Remorseless Punishment. It's 2 black and 3 generic mana for a sorcery. Target opponent loses 5 life unless that player discards 2 cards or sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Repeat this process once. This card is garbage.
Boo!
This card is crap.
Boo! This designer. Boo!
Boo.
First of all, I love that it's the Punisher mechanic and it has the word punish right in the name.
That's pretty good.
It's not bad. This gives your opponent so many choices.
Yeah.
And that's too many choices. Way too many choices. Yeah. Everything has to be like perfectly aligned for this card to do what you want it to do. So
this card can kill, for example, it can kill, like, your opponent could theoretically sacrifice a 2/2 Gideon creature and their Gideon. Or you could just cast a Searing Blaze to kill the same Gideon, right? It's just, this card's not good. There's just no 2 ways about it.
I don't want to talk. All right, so do you have any thoughts on this, Aaron, other than it being garbage?
Yeah, as a black mage, it's like, I prefer black cards that don't give you a choice. I agree with you guys. Anytime you give somebody a choice, it's usually not going to go the way you want it to, and so you want to do things that the opponent doesn't have a say in, typically.
Right. So next up is Call the Gatewatch. So we're going to get these types of cards as we move forward in Magic, just period.
Can I just say that this card reminds me, if I ever did a Magic parody, are you familiar with an artist named Robin?
No.
Okay.
No.
She's everything. She's from Sweden. You need to get into her if you're not.
Oh,
anyways,
you mean musically?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, she has a song called Call Your Girlfriend, and when I first saw this card, I immediately thought of Call the Gatewatch. Like, I turned never mind.
I've never heard of this, but I'm on board. I'm 100%
Go look up Call Your
on board.
Girlfriend. Go look
100%
up Call Your Girlfriend
on
and
board.
change the words to Call the
Ready.
Gatewatch. It will make sense.
All right. So
It's
is
also just Avengers Assemble, right?
It's
that was going to be my nickname for it.
a white and 2 colorless for a sorcery, a white and 2 generic, forgive me, for a sorcery that searches your library for a planeswalker. You reveal it, you put it in your hand, you shuffle your library. That's what it does. It tutors a planeswalker. These effects have generally been bad. They're cool, but they're not very good.
They're not good. But of note is most of them retain their value after they rotate out of standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody who really looks to sort of collect and value trade, Idyllic Tutor still has its value. Steel Shaper's Gift is a random uncommon from like 5th Dawn that still has value.
Yep.
So just pick up your regular and foil copies of these and hold on to them for 6 years, and you'll make money back off of them. But yeah, it's not good. Like, it's not going to see play.
Right, it's not going to see constructed play. So there's a series of uncommon allied color creatures. I only want to talk about one of them, which is Reflector
Is it Relentless
Mage.
Hunter? Is that the one you want to
Dude,
talk
how
about?
did you know? I was
Is it
just going to
player
say,
round?
like Mind Melter is just the most amazing. No, Reflector Mage is a white, a blue, and a generic 2/3. A generic mana for a 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, you return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. That creature's owner cannot cast spells with the same name as that creature until your next turn. That is amazing. Best mana war of all time, not close. Aaron, tell me about Reflector Mage.
The art kind of reminds me of one of the preordained pieces.
does.
Other than that, I'm not really seeing it. But I think
You're
it's
not
one of
a
the.
light
I think.
blue?
Well, no, I am, but I think this is one of those cards that I'm going to need to see to really believe. Like I'm not quite getting it yet, but I think if I see it in action, the pieces will come together, and I'll be like, oh, right, right, right. But right now, it's not really
Yeah.
hitting me.
So there've been a couple. This is sort of a combination of a meddling mage for a turn with a mana war.
Right.
Right. So you're bouncing your opponent's Ulamog, and then they can't cast spells named Ulamog the next turn. Which is interesting. It's also a 2/3 for 3. It's just a perfectly reasonable body just by itself. You know,
Right.
passes the blind phantasm test. But that ability to lock something in your opponent's hand for a full turn is really powerful because a lot of the decks in standard are trying to play completely on curve until they get to the mid game, at which point they're just trying to cast more of the same stuff.
Right.
And so if they hit a roadblock, you know, if you bounce their Siege Rhino and then they can't play Siege Rhino on turn 6,
Yeah, but then they
then
recast it and do another 3 life to you.
on turn 7, you still have a turn
Like
to
that turn's
possibly
big.
draw.
I could actually now that I think about it, I could maybe see this as being like a decent roadblock in like a control deck because the control decks really don't have much to do against something like a Tarka Red. So like let's
Right.
say you have your Swift Spear and that Swift you can bounce the Swift Spear, but now you have a 2/3 blocker. I
Right.
could see it. That makes
Usually
sense.
bouncing a haste creature is just bad, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If you bounce Thundermaw Hellkite, that's a horrible situation to be in. But now you can play Reflector Mage, not worry about whatever giant hasty creature is going to come down the next turn. Wait a turn, maybe try to dig into an answer, a kill spell, a counter spell, something like that, and now you actually have an answer.
Sure.
Of note, I wanted to mention that I love the phrasing on this card. That owner can't cast spells with the same name. So this doesn't come up often, but every once in a while it'll come up. There's a card from Alliances called Splintering Wind that makes Splinter tokens. So if you bounce a Splinter token, they can't cast the Urza's Destiny Uncommon Splinter the next turn.
Oh Lord.
You're welcome,
Wow,
America.
you went so deep. Dude,
Wow.
I'm going to go find the line to drop to you so you can pull yourself back up.
He dug all the way to China on that one. Just
Oh my
Look,
God.
Sometimes you just gotta, Worms of the Earth people.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't even know what that card does. Everyone go
Oh,
Google that.
I love that card.
What is this card again?
Worms of the Earth. Players can't play
Oh.
land cards.
God. It's like
Yes.
Cast a
Legends.
clone, copying
school.
a Mutavault that's a creature. That clone just sort of sits there for a bit. Yeah. Anyway,
right,
let's
so
move on to something else.
Eldrazi Mimic is a
Yes.
rare two colorless, two generic mana 2/1. Whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may change its base power and toughness to that creature's power and toughness until end of turn. This card seems ripe with potential. It's very cheap. It's good on the curve. It's already a 2/1 body no matter what happens. And as your game progresses, this thing just continues to get bigger and bigger as you begin to play larger colorless creatures. Ruben, how do we feel about old Eldrazi Mimic?
Okay, so this card is a card that has the widest gap between hype and potential that I've seen thus far. Because I've heard basically no hype about Eldrazi Mimic, but this card just seems like it could be amazing. Could be nothing,
Right.
but so could everything. But this card could be amazing. And with all of the we've seen the power of Eldrazi ramp. Well, maybe Eldrazi mid-range happens, or there's some sort of devoid deck that comes along that you on turn 5 or on turn 6 you play your 5/5. Well, this is a 5/5 for the turn, and it doesn't have summoning sickness, so you actually get a little bit of more value out of the creatures that follow it up.
Right.
I think that this card definitely has a lot of potential to be much more than just a vanilla 2/1 that I think most people are giving it attention for.
Aaron?
Yeah, I can see this in the Eldrazi aggro builds. My friend Courtney started playing a deck that had like Forerunner of the Slaughter, Vile Aggregate. There's a couple devoid. There was a devoid creature that pumps. It's a black card, pay 1 black and give something like +1/+1. So I could see it in something like that. It starts off as a really harmless 2/1, and then all of a sudden you have a Vile Aggregate, and you're like, hello. So I think it'd be better there. I don't see it in the ramp deck. I know somebody asked me about that. It's not something the ramp deck really wants to do because you're probably not going to have another colorless creature for 6 turns. Then you kind of have a 2/1 that's probably just a chump blocker. But I could see it in aggro. I wouldn't be surprised if Eldrazi aggro became a thing.
Yeah, of course, the dream is Kozilek, right? Just play Kozilek on 10, attack with your 12/12
Yeah.
Mimic. But,
Jeez.
if there's a mono Wastes deck, for example, Walker of the Wastes gets real big real fast. You could be swinging in with 8/8s. I don't think that that's unreasonable.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So they spoiled a whole bunch of cards for the mechanics article, of which there are many. There's a new mechanic support, which puts support X, where you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures. Like on, for example, Shoulder to Shoulder, a white and 2 colorless sorcery that is common. I'm sorry, a white and 2 generic mana sorcery that is common. I'm trying to get it down. I'm trying. Support 2, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, and you draw a card. First of all, it should be sweet and Pauper. This might actually get there. I don't know, but I love Pauper now, and so I get to look at things with a Pauper lens, and it's sweet. But you also have, some really sweet, like you have Surge, which they have Comparative Analysis, which is a blue and 3 generic mana for an instant that has Surge of blue and 2 generic mana. Target player draws 2 cards. So this is about as close as they're going to let you get to an instant speed divination, but you have to work for it a little bit. Tyrant of Valakut, a 2 red, 5 generic mana, 5/4 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, if you paid its surge cost, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player, where its surge cost is 2 red and 3 generic, which is exactly as much as you need for a Seething Song.
That is a nice card. I think that's the surge card. I mean, Crush of Tentacles is sweet because you get to Octopus 1, but I think that Tyrant of Valakut is the surge card that we want. That's the one we're going to try to break.
Well, I also think it's a good card in red, because I think what's going to determine if Surge is good or not is if you have cheap enough spells to go with it. And it's not hard for red to have, like, say, what was the red card that the kids are using? Fiery Impulse? You pay 1 for Fiery Impulse, tack on 5 more, and you have this really big creature. It's not hard to find cheap spells that you can pair with these Surge cards to make them cheaper. And good cheap cards at that. You're not just playing some crappy 1-drop just to get this thing going. So I think the red card is really good.
I think that Manamorphose is not going to be reprinted.
No, they're not going to do... No Manamorphose, no Chrome Mox, no Rite of Flame. They've learned their lesson.
Yeah, they fixed that problem. There's also Spatial Contortion, which is a colorless and an actual colorless and a generic mana. So it is a colorless and a generic mana instant. Target creature gets +3/-3 until end of turn. It is an instant uncommon. This is your nameless inversion for 2015.
This is colorless inversion.
I like this, especially in the ramp decks. I did putz around with the ramp decks for a while, and we were really short on 2-drops. We use Sylvan Scrying, but it's not very good in the standard version as much as it is in Tron. Hang Your Back Walker is a card that's sort of a necessary evil in the ramp decks. If I had my way, I wouldn't even touch it. And even if you are using the 4 Hanger Back Walker, there's still room for some 2-drops. And so, a big hole in the ramp decks is Abzan Aggro and Atarka Red, where you're having to race them to get to your 7 or 8 lands. Something like this could really help relieve the pressure and make sure that you're around to cast your big drops. And so I think that could totally see play.
There you go.
So, any deck in Modern that wants Mutavault in it and has access to things like Tectonic Edge, things like the Green-White Hate Bears deck, could definitely use a card like this also.
Well, the Spatial Contortion, too, also in the ramp deck for Standard, it is a good pump spell. Like, let's say you do get your Atarka out. Atarka's 8/8, cool, I'll make her an 11/5.
Deal the extra few damage, sure.
Right, I mean, so it's really good in the early game, and let's say you draw it in the late game, cool, I'll make my Ulamog a 12/8. It's really not a big deal.
How about we become immense, Spatial Contortion, Teamer Battle Rage?
I'm here for it.
So there was once upon a time a card called Goblin Bushwhacker that was way, way too good for what it was doing. That was a red for a 1/1 with a kicker of a red, I believe it was. Gave all your creatures haste and +1/+0 until end of turn.
Gave all your goblins.
All of your goblins haste. Sorry, +1/+0 until end of turn. Card was still ridiculous.
Yeah. Empty the Warrens.
Yeah. So you have Reckless Bushwhacker, who is kind of its descendant in some way. It is a red and 2 generic 2/1 for a Goblin Warrior ally. It is uncommon, with a surge of a red and a generic mana, with haste. And when it enters the battlefield, if its surge cost was paid, other creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. And yeah, so he doesn't become a 3/1 haster like the original Goblin Bushwhacker pumped himself, but he's pumping your whole team. He's giving them all haste. He's giving every creature haste, not just the goblins, all of them. This card, to me, was one that kind of stuck out. I was like, wow, that's a very aggressive card that is scary.
Give your
Someone
Zergos
on-
haste. Those guys are ogres.
Well, someone on Twitter was talking about pairing this with Burning Tree Emissary, and I'm like, no, like that is my nightmare scenario. Like,
Wow.
Oh, I
Burning Tree
love
Emissary,
it.
Burning Tree Emissary, Reckless Bushwhacker.
Yes,
Oh.
yes. It's you
And
for
I was
what?
just like, no.
8? Oh
Nine.
my god.
Nine.
That 9?
9 times.
9? Oh, because no, other creatures you control get +1/+0, so he
Right.
doesn't pump himself.
Oh, he doesn't. So okay, well that's
Right.
less good.
But
Oh,
still, I
oh.
mean, it's just like I don't want
Still 8. Yeah, you're
That's
right.
still
It's
amazing.
8 times. Doesn't sound as good that way though.
Right. So it's fun. The last one I want to mention because I think it's really weird is Jory Inn, Ruin Diver. It is a red-blue generic mana 2/3. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, draw a card. Now remember, Storm players, it's just the second one, not the one after the other after the other. No. It's just the second spell you draw a card. It is a legendary merfolk wizard. This one's a weird one.
Well, it's the Surge guy, right? You want to cast
Girl.
2 spells. Well, yeah, Surge girl.
Jory's a lady.
Sorry. Surge girl.
Surge
Whenever you surge, you draw
Surge
a card.
girl.
Or whenever you just play 2 1-drops or whatever. Yeah, this card's real good. I like this card a lot.
I know people that are more excited about the art. Like they released I think she's one of the promos. I don't know which one, but there's different full art for her. And oh my God, people were wetting themselves over that. They were like, I need this, and just sort of going crazy. And
Well, she's
God bless 'em.
wearing calcified Eldrazi bits as
Actually,
armor.
I think it's
right?
coral. Somebody said it
is
was
it
closer to
coral?
Coral Helm Commander,
Okay.
that it's just coral. It's not like Kalidas, where Kalidas is like stuck on her head. I think
Right.
she's just
Sure.
wearing coral and being fierce.
It rises
Fair
up into
enough.
the air.
It's pretty great.
Yep. So that's a cool card. So let's move on here. Let's go back to the past. The blast from the past. We're going to talk about the year 2015. Now, our friends over at Hipsters of the Coast had a fine article. It's linked down in the description. Ruben, if you wouldn't mind linking it to the chat.
Of course.
We have what we learned, top 10 stories of 2015. And a lot of them, I think, did a good job at kind of framing the things that we spoke a lot about during the year. I went back through Reddit, for example, and, you see like a lot of memes and you see some stuff, which is great, which like the blind player at the pre-release, that was an amazing moment in Magic. I'm glad it happened. It was really super cool. But when he kicks off with the $40,000 Seance challenge, by the way, I'm still pretty sure Seances are sold out. Is it just me? I don't.
I haven't looked recently, but
It's been a while.
God,
I haven't
hope so.
cared.
I mean, it's hilarious. And all of these streamers and all these players are like, yeah, playing with my Seance deck tonight.
Yep.
And it's like, what is happening?
Did you see that Sean McLaren was burning them on his stream?
Oh my God.
He did a stream, like he was playing Modern, so he was doing his thing, and then he had this weird like dollar store Halloween mask, and he had candles, and it was kind of creepy, and like the lights were out, and he just started burning them. I don't know what the criteria was for him burning them, but when I logged in, he was burning them, and there was some weird music playing, and I was like, what kind of unsolved mysteries nonsense is
So
this?
to recap those folks that don't know what the Seance thing is, that we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Aaron's just completely over it. Basically,
Right.
this guy was buying up copies or paying people to destroy copies of Seance, and then was going to offer nearly first prize money of a Pro Tour, which is $40,000 in Bitcoin. Just a funny
Which is
detail.
90 Bitcoins, by the way.
90 and a half
girl.
Bitcoins.
90 and a half.
To play a deck with Seance in it at that Pro Tour. Just cause he's a crazy person.
Because it's like some sort of social economic experiment. I have no idea what it is.
Or he's a Bond villain and it's going to destroy the world somehow.
Right.
We don't know yet. We're in the middle.
Martin Shkreli, the pharmaceutical
exactly.
guy.
We're
It's
in the middle
very-
of Act 2 of the Seance story. We don't know what the final chapter is yet.
Right.
All
Right
we
now,
know is the setup.
everyone is like, all of them have been bought or it's hard to find them. Pros are building decks around it. I think like they're just, somebody wants to be like the guy who gets the 40K to
Someone
play
bought
Seance.
Someone bought out Gaddock Teagues today for some reason, and I have no
Apparently,
idea
yeah.
why.
Galaxy just went cray cray.
Spikes to like 65 or 70. Yeah.
Ugh.
This happens every once in a while. It's not. You don't necessarily need a Machiavellian bad guy to create a story on Reddit in order for there to be a buyout of a bunch of cards. This happens a lot. But in this particular case, we do have a super sweet Shakespearean evildoer who's just trying. I don't even know if they're evil. They're probably just a bored rich person. But yeah, this is a hilarious story, even though Aaron doesn't seem to think so.
I think it's hilarious.
So
I think it's
instead, we'll
amazing.
move on to something way more hilarious.
Way more
Oh.
hilarious. It's Travis Wu's pro Hitler rant.
Yay!
All
Girl.
right, that's great. A nice lesson in what not to do. A nice lesson that free speech doesn't mean that what you say won't be held against you in some fashion, or won't sort of kind of color you to certain people in terms of the way that you've been explaining the things to people and looking at the world, and that's a problem. Obviously, mistakes were made.
Yeah.
You know, apologies were provided. Damage was kind of done. You know,
Sure.
this is one of those like real lesson learners. Pay attention to how you act, even though you may have maybe your stream may not be full of thousands of people, but things that you may say there can come back to say hello later.
Well, yeah, or immediately say hello.
Or literally the
as
stone
soon as
next
they
minute.
happen. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I think that we covered this issue pretty well in an episode of this. I forget which one it was, but we definitely talked about this a lot. And also, it's another thing is that, you know, Travis Wu shouldn't be completely judged by this one thing, and he has since parting ways with Channel Fireball has created the Magic for Good initiative, which has a Facebook group and has a website. He's set up like a teaching thing where he can teach people how to be tournament or get people closer to tournament level play for a very reasonable fee. I think it was like, I don't know, it was something like $100 total. It was insane. Like if I was like just on the cusp and wanted to be, you know, get some learning from a guy who's top 8 2 GPs, yeah, they sign me up, right? Yeah. So I think that he's done a lot since then, but obviously this is a pretty big misstep. Right. From a pretty big pro name.
Aaron?
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty big blemish, but I think he's done a good job of trying to dust himself off from this. You know, like you said, he started his own side projects. His apology was sincere. Mm-hmm. And in this day and age, you know, apologizing is really hard for a lot of people, and I don't know why. You know, a lot of people like to add so many extra words to their I'm sorries. I'm sorry, but... I'm sorry if...
I'm sorry you feel that way.
Right, and he was very clear about, you know what, I made a really huge mistake, and I really appreciated that. I still follow him. I'm still a fan of his. Yeah. You know, and I'm also... You know, we've talked before about being able to separate people from their personal lives. You know, there are some people that we personally don't care for, but we can still acknowledge that they're good deck brewers, that they're still good players, and, you know, I can acknowledge that this was a really stupid thing to do, but also acknowledge that he's really good at what he does, and I won't take that away from him, and I think he's moved on in a really good way.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, again, I still follow him. I still think he's a great guy. I think people screw up, and, you know...
This is forgivable. However, yeah, you know, once. Everybody gets one.
Everybody gets one. That's how Spider-Man explains it. So we have... Up next, we talk about Alesha, not Alicia. Alesha.
Money sign.
Magic's first... Yeah, that's right.
I'm telling you, Eric Klug needs to make an altar of, like, Alesha as Kesha with the dollar sign. I would
gotta make it pop.
That up.
That's right. Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. So she is Magic's first transgender character. That's a big deal. That is very progressive in terms of what's going on there. The story was unsurprisingly controversial, as they explain it. You know, there were people who were, you know, praising Wizards. There were detractors. You know, back in February, you know, all this about the gender controversy and all this good stuff, and there was a whole Uncharted Realms that had the story of, you know, people saying, well, you know, you're a girl or whatever, or you're a boy. Right. It doesn't matter. The point is, it was. I think it's a big step forward for Magic to be able to have these types of characters in this world, and to not make it like some weird thing that doesn't happen, you know, in Magic. It certainly can, and it does.
I was really excited about this for the obvious reasons. You know, I've been playing Magic for a really long time, and, you know, I'm somebody who I want to go into things hoping to find somebody that I can relate to. You know, one of the things, I know this is an unpopular opinion, but one of the reasons I didn't necessarily care for Star Wars was I didn't really feel like I related to Rey. You know, I didn't really feel like I had much in common with her character. So looking at a Magic card, you know, looking at a hobby that I love and seeing a transgender character.
To ban people in chat, all right. No, go
But I'm
ahead.
just saying, is looking at a character that was like me, to see a trans woman also in a position of power. A lot of times trans stories are like, we're sex workers, or we're manipulators, or we're like we're trapping people, or we're doing all this really crazy stuff. And like to see
Right.
a really great origin story where she's in this tribe, she's in this clan, the Mardu clan, and they allow her to be who she is, and she's able to claim her name and say that you can be who you want to be. Your prowess is still amazing. That doesn't change the fact that you're an amazing warrior. It was just really well done on a lot of fronts, and I think it also gave people something to point to. When you do say that you're transgender, before people would point to Ashiok and they'd be like, "Oh, like Ashiok." And it's like, no, that's
Right.
that's a little different. And
Asexual.
right. And so Alessia was a really great starting point for people to say, okay, you can point to that and say, oh, that's a transgender character, and from there you can have some really great discussions. So it was a good stepping stone.
Absolutely.
First of all, prowess is a Jeskai ability, just so no, I'm kidding. But I think that in addition to Alessia and Ashiok, Narset is on the autism spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And so they've taken a lot of steps with the Planeswalkers and the Legends in general, and the Legends as well, with the characters in Magic, in order for everyone to have someone that represents them, which I think is it's great to have Magic on the front line of that, and I love it, particularly with the Mardu. And the story that we were referring to is the Truth of Names, which is the Uncharted Realms, which the Mardu have this tradition of, once you've had a major battle, you name yourself. And Alessia names, at the time, himself after her grandmother, right?
Sure.
That's how the story goes. I
don't recall.
I believe that's how it works, and she becomes this big, super badass leader of the Mardu clan, and that's a big deal for a company as big as Magic, that's owned by Hasbro, a multinational corporation, to take that step and take the initiative and be in the lead on that. And I love that Magic's on the front line.
And I just want to stress too, it's not hurting anybody. I was really surprised when this controversy sort of happened, and even with extending to Narset, you see such a big kerfuffle about this, and you really have to ask yourself, what is the harm in doing this? There's no, to quote, it's all positive EV. Like, I don't really understand when people try to find a downside to characters like Alessia and Narset. It's like, it just feels like reaching to me. Like, there's literally nothing bad that can come of this, and I don't really get it.
Right. I will say, like, for example, and even as Hasbro is like the mother company to Wizards, there's definitely this weird movement of like, hashtag where's Rey, because Rey from Star Wars is in nothing. There's no friggin' dolls. There's no action figures. When I get my son Star Wars Monopoly, which for what it's worth was pretty sweet. They themed it out a lot. The board looks like the Millennium Falcon, and it's like really sweet looking. They have 4 figures in it. They have Finn. They have Luke Skywalker. They have
Luke Skywalker.
They have Luke Skywalker. They have
Poe Dameron.
I don't think it's Poe. It was another. But
Kylo Ren.
They have Kylo Ren. They have Kylo Ren, Luke Skywalker, Finn, and Darth Vader. For the Force Awakens, they couldn't put Rey in there, and even my son was like, "Where's Rey?" And I'm like, I can't explain that, because even though also, she's the main character,
they're little pewter action figures. How do you not have a little BB-8 action whatever?
Yeah. There was no Black Widow either with the Avenger toys. Like, it's just a really weird time, and it's like
it needs to stop. It's weird and it's bad.
And Magic isn't part of the problem,
and I'm
so
happy
actively involved in trying to switch that, and that's great.
All
God
right.
bless him.
So let's talk about Goifgate. Goifgate
boy
happened right when the show was launched, right when we began doing Magic Mics. Thank you everybody for watching. We started talking about Goifgate. Goifgate was a thing. Owen Turtenwald stepped in some crap, just stepped deep, and then he ground his shoe in it.
It was not just Owen, man.
But it was
Don't say it. Don't say it.
It was lots. But Owen ended up writing a big apology on Reddit, and that's sort of where I get that. But it doesn't matter. Pascal Maynard. Pascal Maynard is the player who they're in the top 8 of GP Las Vegas, largest tournament ever happen. He took a foil Tarmogoyf rather than a card that would go in his deck because he's a Magic player, and Magic players need money to travel around all these things, and he was just being honest. And there was this huge auction that got up to 30 grand or something crazy, $35,000, which didn't go through.
Right, but it did end up selling for over 10.
It did.
Or around 10.
something like that.
Yeah.
And then half of it went to charity for the Gamers Helping Gamers. So that was great. I think it all kind of ended on a nice bow, but it was really interesting how it kind of took over the entire Magic. Just the entire Magic community couldn't shut up about this foil Tarmogoyf and what it meant. And, are you a real pro if you can pass this? Don't you have to pass this because it's not the best card for your deck? Right. Like, you're this is not the spirit of being a competitive player. Like, give me a break.
Go back and look at the video. If you're just you can see his brain working when he opens the pack. He sees like a lightning bolt, I think, which would have been really good in his red-white equipment double strike deck, and he gets to the end and there's a foil Tarmogoyf and he holds it in his hand and he looks at the back and checks for condition. Looks at the Tarmogoyf and he flips back to the lightning bolt and he just looks at the Tarmogoyf.
I don't think it was lightning bolt.
Whatever, it was something really good. It was the card you want. It was like burst lightning.
Random red burn spell.
It was card for his deck, no doubt.
But as we learned later on, he discussed it in his article on Channel Fireball that, plane tickets cost real American dollars, and he can't, afford to pass up a payday.
Right.
The highest chance that he had of making his money back was to take that card, even if lightning or if burst lightning was in his deck. So, it led to a lot of interesting discussions. It led to one of my favorite discussions that it led to is, why can't professional Magic players make a living playing Magic?
One word.
Right?
Sponsors.
I look at this as
Sponsors.
this was very much Pascal's Taylor Swift and Kanye West moment, where this thing happened and Pascal, his name, he blew up. There were a lot of people who didn't know who he was, and I think he did a really good job of sort of leveraging that attention. He went on to win GP Buenos Aires the following weekend, which was hilarious.
Which was awesome.
And when you see his
which
winning
he could only go to because he could afford a plane ticket.
Right.
Thanks to some reason.
Right.
Weird.
But it was also nice because it gave people, it sort of dispelled this notion. Like, a lot of people like to romanticize the life of a pro player, and they just assume that these guys have money and they can go and that they can go to every event, and that they are getting these crazy appearance fees, and that they really are sort of living this life. And there are some of them that have some pretty glamorous lives. I'm not going to deny that, but not everybody does. And, I think Pascal was one of those people where people just assumed, like, oh, you're getting, people are paying you to go here and you're able to do this. And he's like, let me clear that up. And, not every pro can afford to go.
I would argue
it was also the case study too, right? Like, this was at GP Vegas right before the GP cap was going to end. And he was in a locked battle with Alex Hayne. And he wanted that GP slot for Worlds. And it was right there. He was the perfect test case at the perfect moment with the perfect pack.
Yeah.
If I were a conspiracy theorist, I don't believe in conspiracy theories.
Oh, man.
Somebody put that full Goyf in there and see what's up. And they sat him right in front where Pascal did sit.
Are my hero.
So for those who aren't aware, there was a run between Alexander Hayne and Pascal Maynard, and whoever got the most points, the most pro points at Grand Prix during the past year, got the Worlds invite. So that was literally on the line. So think about it. It's not just, he's going to have a payday. No. If he takes the right card for his deck and he increases his percentages that little tiny amount, then he could get he could win the tournament, get more points, get in front of Alexander. He eventually lost to Hayne, and this could have been the decision that made it happen. But if he walks away with $5+ grand when he gives half the rest to charity, who's winning out here? It was really fascinating. So let's keep moving. There's probably, I'm guessing that Wizards is going to unban or ban something before the Pro Tour. They usually do.
Stoneforge Mystic.
Because Modern is boring if you don't do something. For real. It's going to be the same decks that we've seen over and over and over again.
Well,
they're going. I expect it, because when they banned Birthing Pod, which is what we're talking about, right before Pro Tour Fate Reforged.
You skipped one.
That's fine. We'll talk about Birthing Pod first.
Oh, let me talk about Birthing Pod. Then we'll get, which, for what it's worth, I think it's higher up on the list anyway. But you're right. But Birthing Pod was banned right before Pro Tour Fate Reforged. Everyone lost their mind. And, I'm guessing that Splinter Twin might get banned, or Stoneforge Mystic might get unbanned, or Bloodbraid Elf might get unbanned. I don't know. But, some craziness is going to happen, because if Wizards doesn't shake up this format, it just doesn't make for really interesting decks or interesting stories or new archetypes, or for people to actually brew, and make new things happen. So So, do you guys think that's going to happen here? Because I certainly do.
We're already seeing it. There's this new black Eldrazi deck that's making the rounds. It's going 5-0 in leagues. The pros are talking about it. Michael Majors wrote a post about it. I think it's real, using cards like Relic of Progenitus, which I can't even say without laughing because I'm a graveyard player.
Nice.
But there's 4 copies in the main deck, and then they're using the processors from Battle for Zendikar, and you're able to play a turn 3 Blight Herder, turn 3 Oblivion Sower, and just being able to do some really crazy things. You throw in some Path to Exiles. I really do think this deck is the truth. I think it is sort of like our new Lantern Control. I think it's an affordable way to get into Modern, and I'm a little afraid of this deck. So I think this deck is capable of doing some big things. I'm all for Stoneforge coming back. I've said before, I think unbannings are the key here. I think Bloodbraid Elf can come back. I think Dread Return can come back. Fight me.
Wow.
Can do it.
Nope.
And so I think unbannings are the way to go. I really don't think bannings. I think everything's kind of fine right now. Let's unban some stuff.
I agree that unbannings are the way to go. They've said on many occasions that they want this to be a turn 4 format. That means that you can unban Ancestral Vision, theoretically. You can unban Jace the Mind Sculptor, theoretically. You can unban Bloodbraid Elf, theoretically. Unfortunately, you can't unban free spells. So Chrome Mox is going to stay where it is, and Dread Return is going to stay where it is.
Nope.
But you can't. But I definitely agree that unbannings are the way to go. However, it is worth noting that the deck that won the very first Modern Pro Tour and the deck that won the most recent Modern Pro Tour were about 4 cards off.
Wow.
There were both Splinter Twin decks, and one of them had a peak in it, and that's about all the difference that we needed. So I would not be shocked if Splinter Twin got the axe just to shake things up a little bit. But I definitely think that Stoneforge Mystic is a good candidate to come back as well, because that engenders the kind of decks you want. As does Jace, as does Bloodbraid Elf. Maybe not Ancestral Vision. That one's a little. Might be a little bit too spiky. It's miserable to play against is the other thing. And typically another thing that they do, especially with older formats, is they tend to ban things that are not fun to play against. And Lantern Control, boy, is not fun to play against. Not really fun to watch.
I've never
it takes a lot of
faced it.
time. There's a lot of things going on with Lantern Control that make it not what you want in a healthy format. And so I would not be terribly surprised if Ensnaring Bridge got the axe as well, because that was in that 8th edition. We talked about 8th edition.
Yeah.
Right.
Where it's just like, why is this in Modern? So that might be another candidate, but there hasn't been too much hubbub about it. So
All right.
I believe in the people that test the format.
So Oathgate is
There
up
it is.
next.
There we go.
Oath of the Gatewatch. So there's a few things here. One, I was giving credit, I think, to Wizards marketing that probably wasn't really supposed to be given. They didn't seed out the Wastes image and the Kozilek image that was leaked. They obviously didn't seed out all the huge leaks where we talked about all these mythics and stuff on the show. But when the walls fell in and stuff got real, and the judges that run a Southeastern judge group all get either 3 months up to 3 years. When Roberto Gonzalez, here's the chain. Somebody from Wizards gives it to somebody in that Facebook group, which posts it in that Facebook group. Somebody in that Facebook group gives it to Roberto. He posts it. 3-year ban. That's scary. Mainly because the way Roberto continues to discuss it is that he thought it was fake. It's like, this is ridiculous. This weird symbol. Isn't this funny? Maybe somebody made this weird card. In the future, ultimately, I think what you take away from this is that in the future, for God's sakes, if you see something that you've never seen before ever, you should contact Wizards and say, here's the thing. Now, I think, honestly, it might give Wizards more false positives. It's a fake card. We can't address every fake card. Excuse me. Thanks for letting us know. Yeah. Whatever. But if Roberto had just not done that, he talks about it in his MTG Focus podcast. You can listen to him. He talks to Helen Bourgeau directly about it. which is kind of fascinating, honestly. Kudos to Wizards personally. That I can't believe that they had Lynn talking.
She was
to
on vacation too, so this was something she took time away from her family. I think she was like road tripping, so she probably wasn't in like the most convenient circumstance. Like, she was probably in a hotel room.
Yeah, so that huge kudos, man. That's a heck of a PR move, no joke. That's tough to do with somebody who got, you know, a huge punishment and tried to explain that, you know, during the entire process he tried to talk to Wizards and tell them, like, look, I'll tell you everything you need to know, but I don't want to get banned. Can you give me a promise? And they're like, nope, sorry, can't do it. And eventually he's like, okay, fine, here's all the information. And they're like, yeah, whatever, 3-year ban, enjoy it. And like, that's tough, man. And that's scary. So, you know, to see these things, you know, because he was patient zero, because he was the first one to put it on social media, that he was given it was given to him and he put it on social media. That's what got him. So when you get things that aren't shared through social media, when you get things directly, when you see things that are too good usually to be true, basically, it's you can't find the artwork anywhere. You know, mechanics are really weird. You don't understand where this even comes from. You know, there's ways that you can react, and it's arguable that Roberto just had the wrong reaction because, hey, here's this thing that if it's real, it's one of the most exciting things of the year for a Magic player.
Sure.
This incredible, crazy land Kozilek thing, like, oh my God, amazing. Well, that's it's not always a good thing to get that type of attention and to bring that stuff to the world.
Yeah, I mean, you can go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, oh god, the whole thing is so unseemly, and I'm exhausted with a lot of it. But I've been more invested in the part involving the judges, you know, with the discussion about the judges going in protest and taking down the judge sites, and, you know, all of the, you know, the discussion about how judges are treated and things like that. And that was a little more fascinating to me than Roberto's situation. But as a whole, I do support the suspensions. I don't think it's personal. Like, it's not anything. Again, we talk about being able to separate people from the things they do, and I certainly don't think that the judges involved are bad people. I don't think Roberto's a bad person. I do think that there was a questionable decision made, and that decision does come with consequences. And you know, it's just really messy. Like,
it's gross.
Yeah.
It is something I would much rather keep my hands out of, but it's my job to talk about stuff. So you know. Opinions, here they come.
Here we are. Let's do it.
Yeah, I feel like the other thing I want to stress, though, is I feel like Helene was very clear in her interview, like whether or not the sound quality was great. I do feel like if people listen to the episode and really listen to it, I do feel like it would alleviate some of their concerns. I've seen a lot of things from social media from people that make me feel like they really didn't listen to it very well. I wasn't left with any, you know, murkiness after it, and so I can't really relate to people that listen to it and were like, I don't understand. Or like, you know, now that Wizards is releasing spoilers, they're like, well, how do I know if I could retweet this? And it's like, oh, girl, like she covers this in the episode. Like, why are you here?
Yeah, people will continue to be stupid regardless of whether or not they have all the information. Obviously, most people won't end up listening to the podcast, and so they will develop an opinion based on the fact that there is a podcast that they could have listened to but are choosing not to.
Thank you.
But besides that, I don't fault Wizards in any way for being completely bonkers out of their mind angry for their intellectual property getting put online before it was supposed to be. Like, that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about game pieces. We're not talking about Magic cards. We're talking about intellectual property that can lead back to someone losing their job at Wizards of the Coast.
Yep.
Right? So I'm completely okay with them losing their minds about it. As we discussed, what's not okay is to shake your finger at the community for our reaction to posted public spoilers.
Right.
You're allowed to. I'm completely okay with the bans as well. The fact that they were judges led to this whole other shoe dropping where the judge staff was just going to flip tables until Wizards listened to them, which is fine. The judge staff was rightfully upset, but they weren't banned as a result of being judges. They just happened to be in
fact,
this
Helene even said that there was some leniency given to them because they were judges. So the opposite was true.
Okay.
Well, apparently this had happened for many sets. This was not the only set. This has happened for quite a while. And, you know, basically when Magic Judge apps got taken down, that's a big deal. That's a huge thing. That's really serious because Wizards was relying and still relies on a third party to provide the tools that their judge program literally runs on. So, you know, and he was upset. His statement still exists. If you go to the Magic Judge apps, you know, you can still read it there. And, you know, everybody basically got the shotgun blast, and he was very unhappy about it. And the Southeast region had, there was a lot of panic kind of involved. And, I know Ricky at Star City, they pulled together something they could use to just try to get the opens and whatever kind of worked in. But they opened up Judge Apps again after I think it was 3 days of it being down. And he just links to his statement at the top of the page so you can still use the site. And it's one of those where, and I think, Patrick Sullivan, of course, as usual, has amazing comments where he's like, you can pay people like crap or you can treat people like crap, but rarely can you do both.
Yep.
And judges suffer like few other people suffer. They are there before the event. They're there after the event. They are walking miles, literally miles. Every day they're there at that event, running around that hall, making things happen. Even if it's just your local PPTQ, those people are there to make your event awesome, to make you have a good time, to make sure everything is fair and fun. And, to say that like, well, all these people who may or may not have logged into Facebook at that time, may or may not have paid attention to any of this stuff, may have thought it was ridiculous and didn't say anything about it. Well, they also get kind of snared in.
Right.
That can be seen as, like, well, you're being disproportionate in the response, which was another big phrase that happened.
Someday, which would have been last week had our show function, but someday we will have to have a day where we talk about the judges' relationship to Wizards of the Coast and vice versa, and it's a weird one. That where they aren't really employees, so we'll have to talk about that, but that's for another time.
Fair enough. So we got to keep moving. We're going to talk about the rising cost of Standard. Standard is incredibly expensive these days. It has only gotten more expensive as time has gone on, and as sets like BFZ really only have a few like knockout amazing cards. And the cards that are amazing and great, they're amazing and great, but the fetch lands are super expensive. All of the new battle lands get fetched by the fetch lands. Thank God there's no more of these lands in Oath, at least best I can figure there are not. And that's a good thing because mana bases would be completely absurd. So that's good. But you have these, decks loaded with Jaces and fetch lands, and things are getting expensive. And Aaron, I think you mentioned a little bit before the show, you either bring the money, you bring the cash dollars, or you don't show up because you're just going to get outclassed.
Yeah, so I started Standard playing Green Red Ram because I was looking for an affordable deck to get into, and also I like ignoring my opponents. So Green Red Ramp was very nice for me, and I wasn't really enjoying it. So then I tried Ali Antrazi's 4-color Dragons list, and shout out to Ali. But it was the kind of deck where it was like, I feel like there are a lot of decks in Standard that could just be described as worse versions of something else. It's true. And so I invested in Esper Dragons because I had a lot of fun playing Esper, and I managed to get my Jaces for very cheap. Through a combination of Puka points and store credit from doing my other show and things like that. And not only are these cards expensive, but the power level on them, like when you play with Gideon, when you play with Jace, when you're playing a Tarka Red, which is expensive for a red deck, it's like $300, you understand why the cards are expensive. It's not saying that they should be, but when you're playing a deck that's more of a budget brew, these decks can't compete with a Jace, they can't compete with a Gideon, they can't compete with the blistering speed of a Tarka Red. And so that's why a lot of these budget brews aren't taking off, because not only are they less affordable, but the power level isn't there either. And so it really comes down to, you're either playing with Jace, you're either playing with Gideon, or you're playing with a Tarka Red. And if you want to be competitive, you have to do one of those things. And so it's something I didn't really realize until I started playing with Jace myself, where I'm feeling it as I play it, where it's like, they're not even on my level. And it's just, I have to wonder if that was how intentional that was, because the power level is right up there with the cost differential.
This sort of dovetails with the changing meaning of what mythic means, which was another topic that we'd either brushed past or discussed on the show, where originally mythics were going to be the story-driven elements, the real big flashy, and the planeswalkers, the big flashy legends and stuff like that. And then Baneslayer Angel happened, and that was a big turning point in what a mythic meant, because that was a big splashy thing, and it looked cool and had protection from demons. But it was also $25 a piece, or whatever it was.
It
when
got up to $50 a pop there.
Did it get up to 50? Jeez.
They're at the very beginning. That was the first mythic to ever go that high, and everybody was like, "Oh my god!"
But that's what a mythic is now. That's Death Mist Raptor doesn't feel like a mythic, right?
No.
I don't think.
No.
So
not with no.
So, that's it's very expensive, and we've not just for in general, but we had a discussion with one of our Patreon guys in our Google Hangout session. He's from Brazil, where they just don't even play Standard because of card availability and how much cards cost.
Right.
Which is a huge problem.
Yeah, F&M attendance has been down across the board. I know Hallie reported in Seattle she's noticed a decrease in standard attendance. I've seen it at my local game store. I've heard stories. A friend of mine went to visit family for Thanksgiving. He went to New York, and the standard didn't even fire. And so it's a problem across the board.
Yeah, and at a time when Magic is more popular than ever, now we have standard at a low point. Just
Especially
doesn't make...
they're converting all these events to standard too. I think most of the pro tours are standard now, and it's like, so you converted them all to this format that nobody can even afford to play. Like,
no, you can't, because if you try to show up with your budget brews, and shout out to Saffron Olive and NTG Goldfish, I think he does as good a job as you possibly can to try to find something to do in the standard that isn't just Jace and Dragon Lords and whatever. But they're still not as good as these ridiculously $600, expensive decks. But I lost my train of thought. No, here we go. The one of the things I keep hearing from fans, and I really love it, is they're saying, hey, because I put a spotlight on Pauper, because I made a Pauper show, I made a Pauper Magic show, and I've been playing Pauper on my stream. It's been great, because ultimately, people are like, well, I've been doing Pauper, and we've been doing Pauper at our store, and we've been getting like 11 or 12 people every week, and it's been growing, and people are excited about it. And I'm like, that's awesome. Pauper is cool. It's fun. It's affordable. Yeah. It's what you want a good, fun Magic format to be.
It's not a Pro Tour format, man.
It's not a Pro Tour format, and it probably never will be.
Where the Disturbed Burial's going to come from, right? Where are all our good Pauper, where are all the gushes?
Where them gushes going, them daisies.
Ghostly flickers. Where are all of our benevolent unicorns going to come from?
Hey.
Oh, girl.
When Pro Tour Pauper happens.
Well, here's why Pro Tour Pauper...
Out of the back of a van at Pro Tour Detroit.
Pro Tour Pauper will never happen, because Pauper doesn't sell packs like others do. So that's a thing. But otherwise, I want to keep moving on here. Story time. The story of Magic, I think, has seen a real renaissance over the past year. Like, they started the rumblings at the end of last year. They really started doing the cons, and the cons were a big thing. And they were like, look, guys, we have these big, these big stories are really starting to kind of interloop, in and of themselves. Now they've gotten to the point where, like, Magic Origins happen, and all of a sudden you see Mom and Dad from Chandra, and you get to see all this crazy cool stuff, how they got their spark, and Jace was like the bullied kid, and then all of a sudden just was fighting with Sphinx. And
I like Dark Petition. That art is just
it's amazing.
Flavor.
Yeah, the flavor is absolutely unreal. So the flavor of Magic, the story of Magic, has really gotten better. The stories have gotten better. The writing has gotten better. And it's not just the Weatherlight saga all over again. It is, whatever it is. They do a few story points on cards, just a few, and the rest are told in these really awesome Forgotten Realms type things. Between all of that, I think we're really been able to see them say, well, here's the mistakes that we made when we did Weatherlight and Urza's and Mercadian Masks and all that stuff, and we tried to make it super hyper-connected everything. But they said, we're going to have a few big story points on cards. We're really going to pay attention and get authors to write frigging stories, like really write good stories, not just crap like, well, this dude did this XYZ spell, and then this other guy did this other XYZ spell. We actually get to, have stories that mean something. And I think it's just been great for the game. Like, I can't think of any like negativity about it, other than people are just like, I don't care about the stupid story. I'm like, well, you don't really have to enjoy what they're doing.
And they're also not the target audience. The target audience for Magic is a casual person who wants to feel a connection with the cards that they're playing. Mm-hmm. And I definitely have. I feel, well, first of all, I've always felt a connection with the little red guys that attack all the time, because I'm pretty aggressive. But more than that, the switch from focusing on the storylines of Legends to the storylines of Planeswalkers is a big shift in how they tell the stories, and that took place in Lorwyn, obviously. And also the shift to the 2-set system is something that's similar to that, which they're coming out with in upcoming sets. It's not it's not something that they've gone whole hog in yet, but it's something that they're going to be doing for future sets. And the plot to Tarkir, was grokkable. It was easy to get. We were like, oh, it's a time travel set. They got to go back in time and find the magic dragon to be able to defeat these other people. And oh, by the way, we accidentally changed some things because that's how time travel works, right?
Oops.
Could anyone tell me what the plot to like Dragon's Maze was?
I can.
Something about a runner in the maze or something.
I can sum up Dragon's Maze as basically Saw 5. I mean, seriously, did you ever see Saw 5?
Obviously, I've never seen Saw 5.
No, like it's so obscure. It's like you remember Saw 5, right? You remember Friday the 13th
okay, so
9.
The
I didn't care much for Star Wars, but Saw 5. Let me tell you.
Dude, I remember the plot so well. I'm able
The
to
whole
recount
point
it
of
right
Saw
now.
5 is that so Jigsaw has these people and they think that they're actually enemies, when in reality, if they'd simply worked together, they could have gotten through all the puzzles. And I knew how and I knew that's how Dragon's Maze was going to go. Like when they were laying out the premise of like all these competitors have to make it through a maze, the first thing I said was, watch, the twist is going to be that they should have worked together. And sure enough, when Dragon's Maze happened, they ended up getting through the maze by working together. And I was like, I told you this is going to be just like Saw 5, except for the beaker.
Wow.
The beaker.
The beaker?
If you saw Saw 5, you'll understand what the beaker means. I'm
it's
just
fine.
saying.
Don't. All right. It's whatever. I'm not too worried about spoilers for.
Spoiler alert on Saw 5.
Saw 5, guys. Can't believe you just ruined Saw 5. It's just what you do. God.
Anyway, but because the story for Dragon's Maze didn't really hold together, and because there weren't really cards that people wanted in Dragon's Maze suffered as a result.
Dragon's Maze was a terrible set. It was an actual terrible Magic set.
But there were terrible cards in Fate Reforged. Wait, no, Fate Reforged was the one that had good cards. Dragons of Tarkir was the one that had not enough good cards, right?
Well, like Journey into Nyx.
That's
Born of the Gods, rather. Sorry.
Born of the Gods.
Born of the Gods was bad. Born of the Gods was another set, much like Dragon's Maze. Total garbage. Like it had Courser Crew Fix and nothing else.
Eidolon?
Maybe, and Eidolon, I guess,
Eidolon
came
of
from
Great
that
Revel,
one.
I think, was in there.
There it was. Okay, there's your hits. There's your set right there. Like it was.
Yeah, I mean,
it was not good, man.
But now they've sort of taken the storytelling a little bit away from the cards,
Right.
which means you have fewer, problem rares that don't make any sense and are only serving the purpose of telling the story, and more ways to appease people who actually want to play Magic, which is who your whole audience is. So, I think that I love that the storytelling has taken a more central role. I haven't really felt invested in a story before Cons Block. I wasn't like invested in a story since Time Spiral, and that's because I was a huge Magic story nerd, and all my old favorites were back. And if you just started playing Magic in Time Spiral, you didn't care about the story of Time Spiral either. So
It's true.
I mean, I like that, and we talked a little bit about how there are these new characters that different types of people can have different types of connections to. You've got Pia and Kieran Nalaar. We were discussing Ashiok and Alesha, and all. There's a myriad of different characters that everyone can have their heroes, and I think that's an important thing to have in the game.
So we're going to go ahead and discuss. Now, one of the things I want to note real quickly, normally we wrap up the show by around now. We're going to do a slightly extended episode. Last week, everything went to hell in a handbasket, and it was bad and awkward, and we're sorry, and everything went straight potato, and it was sad. We're not doing it this week. Everything's going pretty well this week, and I appreciate that. But what we are going to talk about is one of the most sensitive subjects that we didn't get to touch on back in the day, but we are touching on it right now, and that is Zach Jesse. Zach Jesse, a player who I have met and known personally, I had no idea what was going on when I met the guy. He was just another guy at a PTQ or whatever, or at a big tournament, and he was banned from the game. And Ruben, do you call the exact details so you can kind of give us the story here? I don't want to screw it up.
Zach Jesse won a Grand Prix. And after,
I think he top eighted.
Did he top eight?
He was in Charlotte.
He just top eighted. Sorry,
he was playing Glorio's Vengeance.
Oh, nice. Well, he top eighted a GP, and after the GP, or during the coverage, it basically came about that, by the way, everyone, Zach Jesse, currently on coverage, is a convicted sex offender who's been found guilty of, I think it was. Sexual assault of some kind.
Right.
It was pretty egregious.
It was not good. Yeah, obviously. I mean, he had a record, and the backlash from that on social media as a result led to Zach Jesse being suspended. The official statement, I have it here, from Wizards of the Coast was: "We work hard to make sure all players feel welcomed, included and safe at our events, so that they can have fun playing Magic. We don't generally comment on individuals or provide position statements in the abstract, but we take action to address player issues and community concerns when we feel it necessary. That was the statement regarding Zach Jesse's suspension from Magic the Gathering. It wasn't so much that he was a convicted sex offender, because he was allowed to play in the Grand Prix that he top-aided, but because he had gotten the attention that he got, the perception then was that this is something that Magic allows, which obviously that's horrible, and that ends up, I think, being why he was suspended. Of course, what he did was reprehensible, but he had served his time, correct?
Well, yeah, and he had done some.
That's
I don't know the whole story. I don't pretend to be the expert on the Zach Jesse situation. This was long before I had to know anything.
He did receive a punishment, but I think everybody can agree that it was not nearly enough for what he did.
Okay.
And he has done things like community service afterwards, and tried to volunteer his time to do other things, be a good upstanding member of his community, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, here's what would have happened. Imagine TMZ. You go to TMZ.com. And it's like, sex offender wins card game tournament, or wins biggest card game tournament. And it's like, what? This rapist won the blah, blah, blah. Like, that is not what you want ever in a world ever. And that's bad. And it's like, well, who called him out on it? Why did he call out on it? Well, what was we supposed to do? Like, it got so awkward. I just can't handle it.
It branched out to so many different things, too. Like, isn't a Magic tournament supposed to be a safe place to be?
Right.
Or what is Wizards' responsibility here? Or what about, like, why was Drew Levin involved in this in any way, shape, or form? Because he's the one that sort of brought about the whole information to Twitter, at least in the first place.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of other issues had this show been going on that we could have talked about, but I don't want to harp on it too much.
Right. So go ahead.
Yeah,
Aaron.
this is a really tricky thing, and there were a lot of uneducated opinions going around about this, and
I'm still uneducated.
I didn't say it was related to you guys, but I would have really liked to have seen more people say no comment, or you know what, I don't know enough about this. Right. This is a really sensitive topic. But everybody and their mom felt the need to chime in on this, that we're not qualified to talk about this. It's my job to talk about this, and I don't even feel qualified to talk about it. We made a conscious decision on the girlfriend bracket that we were not going to touch this with a 50-foot pole. And a lot of people expected us to, because we were a show with women, and we all agreed that, like, you know what, there's a lot of stupidity going around. There are too many people in this conversation that have absolutely no right to be, and we're just not going to contribute to that. Like, we're not going to bother getting involved in that. We don't have all the information. This is a really sensitive topic. And the only thing that I will say is that I do support the suspension. I do support the ban. The details of what were done are pretty grisly. And I just can't. Yeah, there's just a lot of information, and so
this
I think
is such
a
can of worms.
And so I think the only thing I can say to people is, if they do want to comment on this, do your homework. There are news articles. Google the case. Find out as much as you can before you try to put an opinion for it, because there are a lot of people who didn't bother, and it shows.
Because we're so gratuitously using the Hipsters of the Coast top 10 list, I'm going to link their wrap-up of the Zach Jesse situation into the chat here.
Sure.
And not only that, but people feel the need to bring him into everything. The oath leaks, for example. This is another example of what no, like, stop. Like, stop making him your martyr.
Right.
Stop making him your reason for why Wizards does everything. It was an isolated incident. The oath leaks have nothing to do with it. The judge suspensions have nothing to do with it. The thirst surrounding this individual is just massive. And
ultimately, I just want to make clear that we're not we're not trying to influence the situation. We are looking back. We're saying, here's what happened. Isn't this crazy and interesting and one of the most important things that happened in 2015? Just to be clear, I'm not trying to bring anything back up, start anything again.
And I don't know if it's still there, but there used to, at least on the Magic subreddit, be a thing on the side that said, hey, this is what our subreddit's about. If you're going to talk about Zach Jesse, do it here instead. Instead of Magic
their hearts.
So this was a big deal this year.
It was, and you had people, jumping on there. It's, the old the ZJ controversy subreddit, as it were, is a thing, and so that was definitely one of the most
Yeah. So
crazy
you guys
things
go
that
ahead and
happen.
spend the next 4.5 months reading the ZJ subreddit.
Right.
Or
Come back
don't,
to us if you've
and
learned
go hug your
anything.
loved ones instead.
Exactly.
All right. So, number 1, gender equality. Now, this isn't necessarily our top 10 list. This is hipsters, but I thought they were really good talking points regardless. Gender equality. So, how about them commentators, Aaron? How about
women in Magic in general?
I have heard literal no female commentator announced for 2016.
So I went on a rant.
Stop.
Go.
I went on a rant.
Elantris,
Yes.
is working Grand Prix Oakland.
Yeah,
Okay.
she will be doing things in between, but she will not be in the commentator booth.
She will not be in the booth, but she will be on camera, and I appreciate
Absolutely,
that.
absolutely, and I'm very okay with that. Love her. I actually went on a rant about
directs
this.
like the vintage Super League stuff too.
Yeah, she does.
So,
as I was saying,
I
so I
apologize.
went.
The patriarchy apologizes.
Well, I like to be proven wrong. I want to be proven wrong. Like if there's
Well,
there's
I'm
a female
trying
in
to prove
coverage,
you wrong, but you
let's
both are
run it.
cutting me off. So
Well,
okay. So what I was trying to say is that I went on a rant about this on 2 different podcasts about how I don't feel that this is so difficult and I don't understand why we're still here and why we don't have a woman in the booth. And I actually received some feedback. I can't name names or comment officially, but I did receive some messages letting me know that there are things in place to which by the end of next year, I think even by the middle of next year, we should see a woman in the booth. I can't say who the woman is. I can't say whether it's on a Star City level or a Wizards level, but I can say that by the middle of next year there will be a woman in the booth. It's not me, and that things are looking up in that field. So
That is fantastic and excellent news. You know, there was definitely, and like we sort of talked a little bit about it. You know, when the show first aired, when Magic Mike's first debuted, there was a lot of this stuff going on. A lot of it was, you know. I think you see a lot of these kind of, you know, women in Magic articles. They come around, they happen. It all seems like everyone kind of nods and smiles and yes is a thing and we should fix it, and then nothing really ever changes.
right.
So
Well,
But I really
this
feel like-
becomes a topic every 2 months, right? Like Gabby Sparks writes an article, and then Megan Wolf writes an article, and then, you know, Jay Dean top 8's a Grand Prix or Star City Open, and then this happens, and then that happens, and then nothing ever happens.
right.
Well, and the difference I think with these cases is that I feel like there has been an impact. I do feel like there are more streamers, there are more cosplayers, there are more women seeing footage, you know, seeing feature matches. I do think that this was a really good year. I do think there's still a lot of work to do. But, you know, when I look back on where my show started, the Girlfriend Bracket started in March of this year, I look at how far even that show has come. You know, the girls on my show, their followings have multiplied like 10 times since we started the show. And the feedback that we get from women, you know, when we go to Oakland next month, we have people who want to interview us. Like we have women who want to interview us for their college papers and for things like that. And you know, Gabby doing her thing and Elantris doing her thing and everything like that. This has been a really, really good year, and I'm really, really proud of the work everybody's done.
And the Girlfriend Bracket is a joke on that attitude.
Yeah, it started off it's actually a joke that people were using to indicate that somebody was playing at the back table. So like, let's say you went X and 4 at a GP, you might look at your buddy and say, oh, I'm playing in the Girlfriend Bracket now. And we decided to sort of reclaim that phrase and be like, you know, let's make the Girlfriend Bracket a really fun place to be, where you wish you could hang out in the Girlfriend Bracket. And people have adopted it, and that's become our show, and we've been really successful.
Nice.
Yeah. And of course, within Wizards of the Coast, women have a ton of prominent positions. Helene Bourgeau,
Kimberly
Elaine
Cranes.
Chase. Yeah, there's a ton.
Yeah, they just did an interview for the Mary Sue.
But, oh, cool.
Nice.
But it's very specifically within competitive Magic that we're sort of seeing a dearth of women. There's Jackie Lee and Melissa DeTora, who both went off to work to Wizards. Melissa, no longer with Wizards, might make a return to the competitive scene. But really beyond that, it's Jadine Klumperens and not a whole lot else, unfortunately. And so a lot of the articles were about that specifically beyond coverage, and because coverage often comes from the competitive player pool, most of the coverage commentators have some sort of competitive background, then they were like trying to go back to the source, which is, you know, well, there aren't enough commentators, which also turns out there aren't enough competitive players, and a whole bunch of that is sort of 1 and 1A. next to each other.
Yeah.
You know, this is probably going to be the #1 story next year too, honestly.
Well, if it works, it's going to be amazing. Being a commentator is hard. It's really difficult.
Let me tell you.
When you see Cedric and P. Sully just destroying it, and you don't really they make it look so easy, just like everyone else. When someone is an expert at what they do, they make it look like you know, it's so easy. It's like I could just make a video, and it's like it's just so easy. But like no, it's hard work, it's experience, it's determination, it's studying, it's making, you know, it's doing your craft, it's studying your craft, figuring out what works and what doesn't, and it's very subtle stuff. It's very minute stuff. That's what separates the people who are just trying to figure out what they're doing to the people who are so good at it. You can't understand like how good they're at. Like, oh my god, it's unbelievable. So that's what I want. I want a female commentator to get out there and just kill it. I want them to kill it. Like I want them to be great.
But there are so many glass ceilings, right, Aaron? There's just too many. So, like, to get to the position where you have the opportunity to practice your craft, you need to do so much more as a woman in Magic than as a random white dude.
Yeah. And that was the issue I had with the recent announcement. So, like, you know, P. Sully has his last broadcast or one of his last broadcasts at the Players' Championship, and Cedric names some names. And he says Angie Boswell, Chris Van Meter, and Craig Krempels. Right. Nice guys. Great players, nothing personal. But these are all guys that have little experience doing coverage. And if we're going with the argument that there are no qualified women, you just hired 3 not very qualified guys. So if you're going to hire somebody who's unqualified, why not make one of them a woman? Like, if you have to train them and groom them, you know, I could see if it was somebody like Marshall. Like, God forbid Marshall got laid off. Like, let's say Marshall got fired. Marshall's vastly overqualified. You'd probably have to put very little energy into getting him in the booth. I could understand why Gabby necessarily wouldn't get hired over him. I get that completely. But when you have 3 people who are at the same level as, say, every other woman candidate, the argument doesn't really hold at that point, where it's like, how, like, you know? And so that was my concern. And then people did reach out to me and said, hey, there are some things in the works we can't really talk about, but this should be getting better fairly soon. So I'm optimistic.
Very, very excited about that.
And and it's all fine and good that we say stuff like this, and we're on television. We're like, yeah, let's fight for the good guys. But there is people on the other side, right? Like, you know, we didn't really talk about the Jim Davis article, for example, and I don't want to go too deep into it, but I'm just mentioning that that's a thing that exists in real life. That there is another side to this, you know, and so that's why I think that you know, with this isn't unfortunately, this issue is long from being over.
Yeah, but I'm still choosing to focus on, like I said, I think we had a really good year, you know, and I'm choosing not to get bogged down in that, and I purposely surround myself with more of the positives, and so I just prefer to see the good.
Don't send out those negative waves.
I will block you.
Don't try to make joy from Bob Ross. Don't be doing that. You will get blocked. No, there's too much joy and there's not enough joy. Don't screw it up. All right.
I also have Robo Rosewater blocked too.
Oh my dear. Well, that guy's annoying because
he's a little annoying. But it's only 1 post a day. It's not like, oh man.
But the you know,
and when he kills it. Like,
so there's a character from one of my favorite movies. It's a movie called Kelly's Heroes. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. It's a comedy with Clint Eastwood. Anyway, there's a character in it named Oddball, played by Donald Sutherland, and he says to his friend, "Listen, if you believe the bridge will be there, then the bridge will be there. Don't send those negative waves." So if you think that something will happen, we believe that positive energy will happen, and 2016 will be better than 2015, which was better than 2014, it's going to happen. And we just have to make it happen.
Is it a bridge from below?
It is not. The movie's called Kelly's Heroes. You should all go watch it. It's my favorite movie of all time.
Right.
All time.
I mean, like...
All time.
So, yeah, but for my favorite Robo Rosewater recently, just got to bring it up because, you know, you'd never see it. Is a red sorcery that they made up called Commandigal, and all it had, the entire text on the card is put a +1/+1 counter on it.
That's pretty sweet.
Because if you like it, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Am I right? Am I right?
Good.
I love that one. It's silly, Aaron. It doesn't supposed to make sense. That's what's cool about it. It's weird.
I forget who invented it, but the best one that I'd ever heard was a card called Indicate, which was target.
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 Love it. And lastly, for 2015,
it's okay. Come back.
It's okay. Well, the last thing I want to cover for the year is Magic Mics exist now, and I'm glad you guys wanted to do this crazy thing with me when I was like, "Hey, on Twitter, I want to make this show, and I want to occupy your life for the next Wednesday night of forever." You okay with that?
I altered my flight plans for the holidays to be like, look, I need to be not flying on Wednesdays.
Dude, you guys are awesome. I love you both. All right, so let's keep on. We're going to move here to our finisher. Last week was Festivus for the rest of us. A secular holiday created in an episode of Seinfeld that celebrated in the eve of Christmas, December 23rd. So happy Festivus for the rest of us. Among the traditions.
Festivus, yeah.
Thank you.
Among the traditions of this secular holiday include a Festivus dinner with friends and family, an unadorned aluminum pole.
I have to get it out of the crawl space. Hold on.
And the annual airing of grievances. So in honor of the holiday season that we are currently winding down, what grievance would you guys like to air?
Well, I'm going to start because I have a big grievance.
You go for it.
I don't think anybody sees coming, but I just want to point out to everybody that Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch is in 2 months and takes place in Atlanta, which is right in the middle of the American Southeast. So there won't be any judges to work it.
Too soon.
Oh,
Too soon.
Ruben!
There'll be no judges working the Pro Tour. It's just going to be
Soon.
players and the food court staff.
Wow. Incredible. Aaron?
Well, as we all know, I have many grievances at all times. It's a wonder I can get any work done with how many grievances I have. But
True.
one in particular that I have is that I have to refollow people like Paulo and Jeff Hoagland just to be an informed member of the Twitter community.
That's
Wow.
at PVDDR
Right.
and at Jeff Hoogland.
It's hard to follow conversations when you have everybody blocked. So it's like, oh, fine, I'll unblock you.
Oh, God. Bob Ross, it's fine. Rebel Rosewater, it's ridiculous.
My block list is just a mile long.
Yeah, I noticed.
Your block list is longer than your follow list. True or
Next
false?
topic.
True or false?
True or false? Wow. Wow. It actually could be close. All right. So
Your witness.
my grievance, ladies and gentlemen, is that the holiday cube is now the vintage cube that was totally necessary for us to enjoy this format. There's no way you could enjoy it if it wasn't called the vintage cube. In fact, when you go onto Magic Online, the format, as you'll find it listed there so you can find the limited cubes to play it, is literally called Holiday Cube 2012 times 3. Come on.
Holiday Cube.
Come on.
Well, first of all, Holiday Cube, hilarious. 2012.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
2012, dude.
Okay, so
2012.
remember how I mentioned the Robin song and Call the Gatewatch?
Right, right.
Okay, go with me on this. Do you remember a rapper from the early 2000s named Chingy?
A
Yeah.
little bit.
Okay,
Yeah.
Chingy did a song called Holiday Inn.
yeah.
Where it was like chilling at the Holiday Inn.
Inn.
What you doing playing in the Holiday Cube?
Oh
Like,
my
he'd do
God.
that.
Wow.
You're just.
Okay. Aaron. Aaron, thank you for joining us this week. Thank you.
Yeah.
The pleasure has been ours.
That's right.
It is rare that we see such amazing things happen from your side of the screen. But tonight,
Yeah.
all the cylinders, ladies and
That's a
gentlemen.
good way to kick off the new year.
That's fantastic.
Also, a good way to kick off the new year. Evan,
Yeah.
before you go away, congratulations. You're in charge.
And your picture looks nice too. I looked at the post.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So everybody go to whatever website. What
Go
is
to
it? Gathering Magic.
gatheringmagic.com.
Go to gatheringmagic.com and you'll see who the big boss man is now. Spoiler alert, it's Evan. Evan's in charge. Look at that.
Yay.
Yay!
Congrats, buddy.
Yay, thank you. I'm going to be in charge of that stuff. My first official change is that Gathering Magic is going to start publishing content at 11 a.m. every day, 11 a.m. Eastern, not at midnight, because midnight. And I'll be there and available every day in case something goes wrong.
That is such good news for me because I always edit my show and then sometimes it runs like 10 p.m. and that midnight deadline is a pain.
Aaron, I know. It's one of the things that I've noticed as I was learning how to do this job from Mr. Staborski. Adam Staborski is going to TCG Player. I wish him nothing but the best of luck. He's an awesome dude who has helped me so very much try to get back into the groove of things and get coolstuffinc.com, which is a fantastic online store, particularly if you're looking for board games. They specialize in board games. They're great at it. Also sell Magic singles, other card game singles, all that good stuff. Gather Magic, of course. Magic content site should be sweet. I'm looking for, I'm looking at the schedule, seeing what's going to happen. It's going to be really fun. I'm excited.
Complaint.
Ruben.
First of all, thank you for calling out Magic Mike's in the very first sentence. But Evan has been knee deep in Magic butt deep.
It's butt deep. It is butt deep. I'm going to have to go in there and fix that right now.
Yeah.
Evan has been butt deep in Magic since the mid-90s.
That's it.
The butt has been just stuck.
You're going to crush it, buddy.
Man.
Thank you. Aaron, thank you for joining us, for real.
Thank you.
Ruben, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys. We're going to move on to our final slide here, and that ends another episode of Magic Mics. Thank you guys for joining us here to hear us. Thank you guys for joining us here live. Stop it. To discuss all things Magic. I want to thank my co-hosts Aaron Campbell and Ruben Pressler. You guys for watching. Hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com. That exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicescast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, and on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.